With regard to energy, further investment in Canada's and Ontario's energy infrastructure is fundamental to ensuring long-term sustainability. Ontario is embarking on a 20-year, $87 billion long-term energy plan, including $33 billion for new nuclear reactors, $9 billion on new transmission lines, and a $27 billion commitment for renewable green energy. OSPI supports a multifaceted approach that gives equal consideration to conservation, renewable energy, and new generation, as well as the adoption of Canadian technology in the construction of new energy infrastructure. So there's a position in terms of what the voice of the engineers have been telling us. So the question is, what is your position on nuclear power, carbon fuel power generation, renewable energy sources, and some framework for the provinces to work together on a national strategy for energy? So we've walked into this question already. If we could perhaps structure the answers more specifically against the question, and I promised to kind of reverse the order, so we'll start this time with Ray.
All right. Again, I'll read the response. Energy is the point of convergence of some of the biggest challenges shaping Canada's future. Economic competitiveness, environmental responsibility, the fight against climate change, the cost of living for consumers at home, and our contribution on the international stage. Each province has the responsibility to choose the energy mix that works best for them. Nuclear power in Canada has been used in the past, and provinces will presumably continue to use it as part of their energy mix in the future. The Conservatives continue to waste taxpayer money through their mismanagement of Atomic Energy Canada Limited, AECL. When Mr. Harper decided to privatize AECL, he placed restrictions on AECL that prohibit it from seeking our new commercial contracts so that the corporation can generate new business to survive without resorting to taxpayer dollars. By keeping those restrictions in place, he is sacrificing 70,000 direct and indirect Canadian jobs and costing taxpayers billions in lost revenue. A liberal government will unfortunately inherit this problem, but we will do things differently. We will lift the commercial contract restriction on AECL so that it can generate new business and stay afloat without the help of taxpayer dollars. A Liberal government will provide the leadership required for a successful transition to the prosperous, cleaner economy of tomorrow through action in 4 major areas: becoming a world leader in clean resources, a new Canadian Clean Energy Partnership, action on climate change, and stewardship of our natural environment. Different provinces have different energy mixes, and both exports and imports of various energy products play major roles in provincial economies. At the same time, there are also common issues, shared challenges, and tremendous opportunities. A pan-Canadian process for collaborating on those shared challenges is essential for the long-term transition to the clean, energy-efficient economy of the future. At the beginning of the election campaign, Mr. Ignatieff highlighted that Canada needs a vision for east-west sharing and selling of energy, not merely continuing with the status quo of selling surplus electricity to the South. Liberals will work with all stakeholders to forge ahead with this vision. In the United States, the Obama administration is spending twice as much as Canada per capita on energy efficiency measures, and 18 times more per capita on clean energy.
So we're actually at 3 minutes, but I think what we'll do, because we'll have a little more time, we'll finish this. We'll certainly let Jean-Luc, you'll have a little more time. So please proceed.
Thank you. Not only does this make Canada an international laggard, it means our companies and workers are missing out on what is predicted to be a $1 trillion market by 2020, with 10,000s of new high-paying, high-tech jobs. While the world has been moving forward, Harper and the Conservatives have been moving backwards, cancelling funding for clean energy innovation and technologies. A Liberal government will launch the Canadian Clean Energy Partnership, inviting provincial and territorial governments, the private sector, and stakeholders to work together on 5 Canadian-wide objectives. The first objective, manage a long-term transition to low-carbon economy of the future. Number 2, helping families advance energy efficiency and conservation. The third objective, encouraging Canadian businesses to become more competitive through energy efficiency. The fourth objective, securing clean energy jobs in Canada. The fifth objective, doing our part in the global fight against climate change. Liberals are committed to quadrupling by 2017 the amount of electricity derived from renewable sources. The reintroduction of the Renewable Power Production Incentive, RPPI, if you're familiar with that acronym, will provide $1 billion to support innovation and market development of clean technology to achieve this goal. The Liberal government will provide $400 million annual green renovation tax credit to help families advance home energy efficiency and conservation. Renewable energy should have a growing position in Canada's energy mix, and a Liberal government will help achieve it. Canada must move forward on all fronts, advancing renewable while also lowering the carbon and environmental footprints of continued fossil fuel development, including oil sands and consumption. A Liberal government will immediately end the accelerated capital cost allowance for the oil sands sector. This will yield nearly $500 million in government revenues over the next 2 years. We will earmark these anticipated government revenues for 2 purposes: new or improved incentives for industry investment in emerging technologies that will decrease greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental impacts of oil sands development. And we'll invest in monitoring and scientific research on environmental impacts of oil sands development in pursuit of knowledge that will inform the exercise of federal regulatory responsibilities. Liberals understand that we have no choice but to make our economy cleaner and more efficient, or else the jobs of tomorrow won't be created in Canada. We believe these measures will help Canada achieve this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just so everybody understands, that was the longest answer of the 6. So thank you for listening through that. That actually did run close to 7 minutes in terms of time. Feel free, Jean-Luc. You can use the time.
I won't use it all. No. It was fascinating. You removed the word liberal from that whole statement, and it was the Green Party's platform in 2008.
Really?
It is, which I guess we're flattered about. Unfortunately, we don't hardly ever get credit for the good ideas. We only get the credit for the bad ones, like carbon taxes and Stéphane Dion unable to sell it. No, the Green Party has a very similar platform to this. Of course, we ultimately want to see all subsidies removed from energy projects so that they can all compete on the same equal footing. Right now, the subsidies are done in many different mechanisms, and it's hard to actually do a cost analysis on the different forms of energy. So the oil and the tar sands and the natural gas exploration, we would be removing all of those subsidies and all those tax breaks from those companies. And that would be of the tune of something like $5 billion over 2 years. So somewhat similar to the Liberal plan, except their goal is for $500 million over 2 years. So obviously we're much more bullish on removing those kinds of subsidies. We also have, as part of that $5 billion cost savings, we would take $1 billion of that for every year for the next 3 years and invest it in the East-West grid interconnect. The Liberal platform that was outlined there, that sounds right out of their red book, talks about building East-West and building a way of sharing the load across the Canadian time zones. because ultimately that is the limiting factor for a lot of electrical generation. The Eastern time zone is very heavy when it comes to peak hour in the summer months and in the winter months, but outside of those peak hours, the other provinces start getting busy. By most calculations and models, adding an east-west interconnect across the provinces would actually save us from building about 6 natural gas peaker electrical generators. So that would create not only a savings in carbon emissions, but also facilitate multiple provinces from benefiting of having electrical trade east and west. Not only that, I think one thing that wasn't really mentioned there is that this would actually be a nation-building exercise. There were allusions to trading our electricity to the south, which happens quite a lot. Manitoba and Quebec actually make it part of their budgets, saying we will not charge our citizens X amount of tax because we have made 10, 20, $30 billion by selling our electricity to the United States at a premium. If we were to do this from an east-west interconnect point of view, we would now start being able to share our capacity to transmit to the United States, who will be in the next 10, 20 years looking for low-carbon sources of energy. Their electrical grid is 60% coal at this point. So we have a $1 billion plan to add east-west interconnect. We would be removing subsidies from carbon-based electrical generation. We would, specifically to the question, there is, of course, a mixed approach that would be needed. Natural gas works well for handling peak load situations. Hydroelectric is, of course, the best of all worlds. It can be a sustained source of energy. It could also be used for peak generation because it can go from 0 to 100% in about 60 seconds. It's also, well, once it's built, very environmentally neutral. And of course, nuclear, I recognize it is an unfortunate situation that we will have to resort to that, given the sort of the unknowns of how expensive it is to maintain the byproducts of it. But nuclear is of course, a great baseload source. Wind, in my mind, is cost effective with many of the other sources of energy, though of course it is not as reliable. But we have a lot of land in Canada and we can use it. Oh, pardon. We can use it. We can install wind turbine technology across the country and not just around populated areas. My read, and from what I've read from the research, is that solar panels are not yet have not yet reached the point of being cost effective for utility scale applications. For cottages that are distant from grid interconnect, it's often cheaper for you to put solar panels on your roof and get a battery system than it is to pay Hydro One or Hydro-Quebec to connect you. But I don't feel that the price point is right for utility scale. But research is always improving on that, and I'm hopeful for the future, and we should be investing in that form of research. Now, with all this said, the Green Party is always focused on conservation first, because it is at least an order of magnitude less expensive to institute a conservation policy and a conservation plan nationwide or even provincially or even by city than it is to build any form of electrical generation. Make do with what you have, do more with less. These are the sort of things that got our economy to where it is today. Increasing productivity to do more with less is how societal wealth is created, and we're very much focused on that. I encourage people after reading that to look at the Green Party policy on our energy plan, and I think you'd be surprised at how similar it is to what was just read to us here today.
Okay, well, thank you. Why don't we take a moment, a couple of questions?